It is a good morning, brothers and sisters. It is a good morning to be in church. Indeed, every time we come to church, it is a good thing. There's so many other things that each of us could have been doing, but because we have taken out the time to seek God, God will bless us tremendously for it. We first of all thank the praise and worship team. The praise and worship team always ushers us into God's presence, and they do a lot of preparation as well. What we see here is like the end product, but a lot of work goes into it. I want to talk about the Argent who gives the announcements. It's not an easy thing to give announcements. It's not an easy thing to get up and speak in front of people. A survey that they once did, they asked people what is the thing that they feared the most, and the second greatest fear that people had, they have was the fear of death, and the number one greatest fear is the fear of public speaking. So it's not so easy, and we talk about the Argent. He always does it diligently and lifts us up. We thank the ushers and those who prayed for the offering, Brother Lozano. We thank the controller of the projector. We don't see the good work that is done. The only time we notice is when a little mistake is made, right? But he does a good job, and he does a lot of work behind the scene as well. We also thank the ones who help in getting everything ready for the service, the multimedia ministry. There are some that nobody ever sees come up front, but Pastor always asks me if I have a message to present that I should email the key verse and other texts that I would to sister authors in this case. So there are a lot of people who work behind the scene to make things happen, and we give thanks for them. The board, of course, the board of this church, who meets on a regular basis and does the logistic work. It is indeed a gift of the Spirit, the gift of administration, and we thank them for it. God really God rewards every work we do for Him. Every service we render for the Lord brings supernatural and natural blessings both in this life and the life after. So we thank everybody. And of course, Pastor Jeanette and Sister Jeanette, who basically takes a big load on their shoulder every day. Amen. I was at work just the other day, and somebody, unbelievers like to do this, they were criticizing, finding fault with a church that was asking for help, and they were wondering, well, why should we give the church money, and these pastors in Belize are making so much money? And I told him, you're wrong. I told him the majority of pastors who work in Belize, many of them, the majority of them, don't even get a salary. They have to have a second job in order to maintain themselves. And I told him that where you work, if they call you 2 in the morning, you get if you just answer your phone for 5 minutes, you get a $50 call out. Tell them when they wake up the pastor 3 in the morning because somebody is sick and he needs to pray for them. Or when they call the pastor at 2 in the afternoon and ask him to come to the hospital and pray for somebody, who is paying him for that? When he has to pour out his heart and share his emotions with us who are hurting in the church, who is paying him for that? When he has to do a funeral 9 o'clock Saturday morning, while the rest of us are at the market or enjoying our weekend, what reward do they get for that? But the reward is in heaven, right? Yes. So we acknowledge the work that Pastor does and his wife. And what I said doesn't even begin to skim the surface of what they do. This is the third Sunday of the month, brothers and sisters, in which we highlight women. And our key verse is taken from Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. And let's read it together. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male or female, for we are all one through Christ Jesus. Men and women, well, as far as the Bible is concerned, what Jesus is saying, He has no distinction when it comes to people in the church. And men often feel that we are superior. Sometimes we feel that we are superior to women. And some men have even prayed, I've heard it, some men have even prayed, thanking God that they were not created a woman. Strange enough. There is no favoritism with God. Some shocking, right? There is no favoritism. I think some women also pray and thank God that they were not created men, right? There is no favoritism with God. Even if it seems that way to us at times, it is because we are looking only from one perspective, only from this part of eternity. Men and women each have their roles in the kingdom of God. None is more important than the other. Just as each person's role is different in the church, all are of equal importance to God and to the overall well-being of the church. As long as each carries out their role with diligence, we are in the right service for God. Throughout the Bible, women have been shown to hold significant positions in society and also in the church, also in the kingdom of God. We look at Deborah, for example. Deborah was a prophet. This is in the Old Testament now. Deborah was a prophetess. And she was also the fourth judge of the Israelites. The book of Deborah chapter 4 verse 4 says, "Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lamoth, was leading Israel at the time." She was a leader of God's people, even in the Old Testament. And we saw that God used Deborah to help deliver the Israelites from the oppression of the Canaanites. We see in the book of Esther that God used a humble Jewish girl called Esther to save his people from near annihilation by a wicked nation. When the king's right-hand man, Hanan, devised a plan to kill the Jews, Esther's uncle Mordecai found out. He went to Esther and asked her to go before the king and ask that the family of Israel be spared. Though Esther was queen, she did not have the right, by the law of that land, she did not have the right to lay her case before the king without the king inviting her. King Ahasuerus had not called her to his presence for over a month. She knew that going before him uninvited could mean death. That was the tradition in that time. But yet she risked her life and she appeared uninvited before the king to plead the case for her people. And we see that God used her to save. The king had already made a proclamation that on a certain date that all the Jews should be plundered, that you can plunder what they have and kill them out, because they were in a foreign land under oppression. And we see that God used Esther to save his people. Hannah was barren. She wanted a son, but God had not granted her one. She begged the Lord for a child. In return, she promised to dedicate this young man to God's service. Her son was born, and she followed through on her promise. She took the child to Eli the priest and left him to be raised in the temple. She continued to have influence over the boy's life throughout the years. Her son grew up to be Samuel, one of the most influential and godly men in the Bible, a mighty prophet. And we all know Mary. Mary was the mother of Jesus, the Messiah. She found tremendous favor with God and obeyed him. The angel Gabriel said she was highly favored and that all generations will call her blessed. And even though our generation is still calling Mary blessed, right? Lois and Eunice. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5 says, it was speaking about why Paul gives thanks to God for Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5 says, "When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that in thee also." In this case, Timothy's grandmother Lois and mother Eunice taught Timothy many things about the Bible, as they seem to be diligent students of God's word. There are many more who we can think about, such as Abigail, the Shunammite woman, Ruth, Naomi, Rahab. The Bible is full of great, strong women of God. It would be very interesting for us to learn from these women. I can tell you, brothers and sisters, that I see that the Lord makes no spiritual separation between male and female. Similar to the church, though we are many members, we form one body, and also so in the home, the two become one. What God is concerned about is that we become one in unity under Christ, male and female. Today we will focus on the story of Abigail and learn what we can learn from that story, what God will have us learn. So the question is, who is Abigail? Abigail's story is found in 1 Samuel chapter 25. At the beginning of the story, Abigail is the wife of a wealthy man named Nabal, who lived in a town called Maon in the wilderness of Paran, an area near the Sinai Peninsula. Abigail was intelligent. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman who saved her husband and his household and prevented David from doing something rash and secured an unexpected future for herself. The story of Abigail in the Bible is an interesting one for many reasons. Well, for one, Nabal is a rather strange character, as we'll find out in a little while. For no apparent reason, Nabal refuses David's request for food and shelter, despite knowing of David's previous generosity to his shepherds, Nabal's shepherds. Nabal rudely refused to aid David and his men as they tried to keep one step ahead of Paul. David's request was not unreasonable, but Nabal, who is described as surly and mean, essentially spits in the faces of David's servants, saying, "Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse?" Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days, Nabal was saying. "Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have started for my shearers and give to men from whom we know not where they're from?" But let's look at the story in more detail, brothers and sisters. If you can turn in the Bible with me to 1 Samuel chapter 25. And we read, "Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah. Then David moved down into the desert of Paran. A certain man in Moab who had property there at Carmel was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel, shaving off where they were basically reaping the wool from the sheep. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail, who we'll be focusing on. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. While David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. So he sent 10 young men and said to them, "Go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name. Say to him, 'Long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours. Now I hear that it is sheep shearing time. When your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them, and the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. As your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore be favorable toward my men. Since we come at a festive time, please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them.' When David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name. Then they waited. Nabal answered David's servants, 'Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have started for my shears and give it to men coming from who knows where?' David's men turned around and went back. When they arrived, they reported every word. David said to them, 'Each of you strap on your sword.' So they did, and David strapped his on as well. About 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. One of the servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, 'David sent messengers from the wilderness to give our master his greetings, but he hurled insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us. And the whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. Night and day there were a wall around us. The whole time we were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him.' Abigail acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 sheaves of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on donkeys. Then she told her servants, 'Go ahead, I'll follow you.' But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she came riding her donkey into the mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending towards her, and she met them. David had just said, 'It's been useless, all my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness, so that nothing of his was missing. He has paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Pardon your servant, my lord, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He's just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. And so for me, and as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my lord sent. And now, my lord, as sure as the Lord your God lives, and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, may your enemies and all who are intent on harming my lord be like Nabal. And let this gift which your servant has brought to my lord be given to the men who follow you. Please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my lord, because you fight the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies will be hurled away as from the pocket of a slave. When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him, and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, remember your servant." What a greeting, right? David said to Nabal, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day, and from avenging myself with my own hands. Otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak." Then David accepted from her hand what she had brought him and said, "Go home in peace. I have heard your words and granted your request." When Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like that of a king. He was in high spirits and very drunk. So she told him nothing at all until daybreak. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things, and his heart failed him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise be to the Lord, who has upheld my cause against Nabal for treating me with contempt. He has kept his servant from doing wrong, and has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head." Then David sent word to Abigail, asking her to become his wife. His servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, "David has sent us to you to take you to become his wife." She bowed with her face to the ground and said, "I am your servant, and I am ready to serve you and wash the feet of my Lord's servant." Now, that is a powerful story. And it shows us, brothers and sisters, what one woman, the tremendous wisdom of this one woman. If it were not for her, Nabal and all of his servants would have definitely been put to death by David, who was very angry at this stage. What can we learn from this story concerning Abigail, one woman Abigail? First of all, do not turn your back to the needy. Do not turn your back to the needy. David was giving a high greeting to Nabal. If you look back and you see where in this text where David was sent his servant to greet Nabal, he was actually blessing Nabal and wishing him good life. And we see that with all of this high greeting that David's servants gave to Nabal, why do you think Nabal did not highly regard this greeting? Well, he probably actually scorned this greeting. This because Nabal thought he was somehow above poor David, somehow superior to him because of his social status and financial standing. Now, if we look at the backdrop of this story and we read it in context, we see that Abigail knew a lot about David. He knew about God's plan for David. He knew about all the battles that David had won up to this point. He knew that David was a great man. He also knew that David's men had actually protected Nabal's men when they were in the wilderness herding their sheep. She knew all of this. So of course Nabal knew about it as well, but he was ungrateful. Sometimes even people blessed of the Lord become in need, as was the case with David, and should not be scorned upon. We remember, for example, the young man that Pastor told us about that Sunday morning, who went to his house asking for help, and that this young man was in need, seeming destitute. But yet Pastor looked down. He did not scorn the young man from his high house. He looked down. Pastor could have looked down on this man from his high house, but he looked down literally and figuratively. Instead, Pastor came down. He came down literally and figuratively and showed this man compassion. Physical compassion by giving him some money, meeting his physical need. And he showed him spiritual compassion. When the man broke out into tears, Pastor gave him a hug and he invited him to church. When people on the street beg us for money or for food, we should not look down on them nor turn away. Before and after you have helped them, oftentimes these people, you would hear them say, God bless you, sir. Sometimes they come with a greeting, God bless you. And when you have given to them, they say, God bless you as well. My advice, brothers and sisters, we should not scorn this blessing. We should not think more highly of a blessing from a brother or sister in church than for that person who may be half mentally ill on the streets, who may be covered with sores or whatever. After you have given them something, if they say, God bless you, brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, many of those blessings are coming directly from God. So we should not be like Nabal and scorn the blessings and scorn that blessing because it is coming from someone of a lower social standing than us. Receive that blessing and tell them thank you. You do not know whether that blessing is coming from God through that apparent destitute soul. As a matter of fact, God settles the matter for us in case we are confused. In the story of the rich man and Lazarus that we see in Luke chapter 19 verse 31, which says, I won't read the whole thing, but it says, there was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate was there a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs came and licked his sores. The time came when the beggar died, and the angels carried him to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades, where he was in torment. He looked up and saw Abraham far away, and Lazarus by his side. So he called to him, Father Abraham, have pity on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this fire. Many of these people, brothers and sisters, who we see as destitute, homeless, begging, will go to heaven. And those of us who have good things here on earth are expected to be generous to them and to other people who are in need. As a matter of fact, God identifies with those in need. When we're helping them, we're helping Him. When we turn away from them, we're turning away from Him. This is what the scripture says. And that the many, Jesus said, and that the many will say to me, Lord, Lord. And He will say, away from me. When I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was naked, you did not clothe me, and so forth. And the scripture goes on to say, He will ask them, when did I see you like that and not do it for you? He said, whenever you did not do it to the least of these, you did not do it for me. And so, brothers and sisters, and conversely, Jesus gave credit to those who would help those who are in need. And He said that when they did it for Him. As a matter of fact, even in the story of Saul, who became Paul, we saw that when he was on the road to Damascus and he was struck down by that bright, when he saw the bright light, a voice was heard from the light saying, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He said, who are you? I'm Jesus whom you are persecuting. Now, Saul wasn't going to Damascus to persecute Jesus in person. Jesus had already gone to heaven. But he was going to persecute those Christians who were in Damascus. And Jesus identifies with His people who are under persecution and those who are in need, those who are poor and hungry, I venture to say, when we go out and we look at those people who are begging us for things on Albert Street and elsewhere, and we wonder how did they end up like that? And we see like there is no hope for them. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, it's the same way this poor man who was covered with sores looked at the rich man's gate, covered with sores. Even the dogs were licking his sores. How lower than that can you get? Seems even lower than some of the people who we have around begging us, or just as low. But that man ended up in heaven. The scripture tells us, parts of scripture tells us, Jesus warns us that many have good things. Even in this scripture, where Abraham told the rich man, he said, you had your good things here on earth. And now this poor man who was destitute, he will have his good things in heaven. I believe that many of these people are dear brothers and sisters to test us believers, to test us and see how we will treat people, because God is all concerned about love. And so as much as possible, it doesn't matter what we think, how we rationalize it, we should look to help those who are in need. And we should always seek and ask God how we can help them more. And this goes for people out there who are on the street, it goes for those of us who are in the church. As long as God has blessed us, we should always look in for how we can help others. Because the truth is, we can't take anything at all with us. I was texting with a family member who is very wealthy by the standards of this world, and we were talking about things of God. And this guy has a lot of land through one of the new roads, the new airport road. And when I was texting him, telling him about the things of God, he says all he was concerned about mostly is with his many lands that he have in Belize. I said, many lands that you have in Belize? He has like 20 acres through the new airport road. I said, many land that you have in Belize? I told him that land was here before you were born, and after you are gone, that land will still be here. All the land and everything is for God. All that will matter is what we have done to help others with what God has blessed us with. Because God is identifying with those who are in need. We can also learn from Abigail's story about living in peace. Of note is that David and his men even worked to protect Nabal's possessions. We saw that. Nabal didn't even acknowledge that. David did not take this rejection well. He swore to kill every male associated with Nabal's household. He had strapped on his sword and was on his way with 400 armed men. When Abigail met him on the road, she offered David gifts of wine, grain, prepared meat, and cakes and figs. Then she fell down in front of David, pleaded with him to show mercy to her husband, Nabal. In her plea, Abigail shows that she understands Nabal's character. Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man, Nabal. He's just like his name. The name means fool, and folly goes with him. It was not that she was talking against her husband. She was doing what she thinks she needed to have done to save his life. And in fact, by pleading that way, she saved his life. I think she was saying really like what Jesus was saying on the cross. Forgive him, for he knows not what he has done. By working to save Nabal, by asking David to spare his life, Abigail shows herself to be a righteous, caring wife. At great risk to herself, she approaches David. If it was another man, an unreasonable man, not a man of God, in the heat of battle, with so much anger, she herself could have been killed. So at great risk to herself, she approaches David, an angry man bent on revenge, and intercedes for her husband, despite his bad behavior. He must have been a rough man even to Abigail, but still she sacrificed for him. Her request can be seen as a picture of Christ, who offered himself as a sacrifice to save foolish sinners from the consequences of their own actions, and who continues to intercede for us. Just like Abigail could have lost her life to try to save Nabal, Jesus could have lost his life, and in fact he did, to save us. Abigail's population saves the day. David thanks Abigail for staying his hand and repents of his own rash decision to slaughter Nabal's household. In fact, David sees Abigail's coming to him as a blessing from God, and he sends her home in peace. As a matter of fact, David realized that he was actually about to commit a great sin, right? Because notice, many times before David go to battle, he would ask God what to do. But on that day, he did not pause to ask God what to do. He did not pause to ask God what to do. He just went out in a fit of rage. So we learn from Abigail, and we learn from this portion of the story that at all times believers are to live in peace. As a matter of fact, Romans chapter 12 verse 8 tells us, if it is possible, as far as it depends on us, live at peace with everyone. The peace we promote, brothers and sisters, will actually protect us, and it will protect others. There are many believers, many men and women of God who in a fit of rage have done certain things and are now spending some long prison time right now. I think even brother Sanchez told me of this guy who was a street businessman, one of his a business associate in the past, who he said that one day you probably heard of the story. And it was not that he was an ungodly man, but this man was coming from airport. His family, his mother-in-law sold food at the airport. The man was coming down from airport, and by the time he was coming down with his mother-in-law in the back seat, and by the time he reached the airport junction, he ended up killing his mother-in-law in a fit of rage. Now surely that didn't happen immediately. It didn't happen immediately. There was anger that was festering, other things that was happening, and this man did not allow God, the peace of God, to dwell in him. But he festered up that anger. And it's something for all of us believers to keep in check. Because I'm telling you, even as Christians, oftentimes situations confront us, and if we'll be honest with ourselves, when we think about it, sometimes we can consider if indeed we're only on 2 eyes or 4 eyes, what we would do or want to do with certain people. But that is not of God, it is of the enemy. And if we're not careful, the enemy can present situations to us that will derail us from God's plan for our life. Even King David, the mighty man of God, he was so humble. Even while Saul was pursuing him, he had the opportunity to kill Saul. Yet he was humble. He was humble, and he, even though he knew that God anointed him, God had him, he was the one anointed as king. He was humble even to Saul. And we see he was humble throughout. But one situation here presented itself, and he became extremely angry and was willing to kill this man and many other men. But thanks be to God, we see that God sent an intervention. And we as believers, brothers and sisters, sometimes things overwhelm us so much that there's a need for an intervention as well, for somebody to intervene. And God will send somebody to intervene, or a situation to intervene, or a Bible verse to intervene, or an SMS or a WhatsApp message to intervene. We need to be ready that when the intervention comes, that we receive it. Just as how David had received the intervention from Abigail, we need to be ready. We need to live by the Spirit, that we will be willing and able to receive the intervention when God sends it, for us to shake us up back into our senses. Because David could have went ahead and disregarded Abigail and proceeded to what he would have wanted to do, but that could have derailed him from the plan that God had for his life. So Romans 12 verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And finally, what we can learn from the story of Abigail, repent, not revenge. Meanwhile, Nabal, insensitive to his wrongdoing and the danger he had been in, holds a kingly feast for himself and gets drunk. Abigail waits until the next morning for her husband to sober up, and then he tells Nabal everything. You notice Abigail, and this is a big kudos for a woman, right? You notice how wise Abigail was throughout this entire thing. as a matter of fact, when Abigail met David in the ravine, and we saw how God used Abigail to proclaim certain things to David, it was tremendous wisdom. It even seems as if though it was a prophetic utterance, almost from this lady, who was not herself an Israelite. And we see that God used a lady, nonetheless, to do all of this. These are kudos for ladies, that you should always lend yourself open to the will of God. And to men, we should always lend ourselves open to the will of God. We should never, as Christians, many situations will confront us. As Christians, husbands, some of you men,